Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video, and in this video we're finally back talking about Survivor South Africa. Now, months ago we did find out that Season 9 was going to be the first ever All-Star season titled Return of the Outcasts, and we are finally here with a rumored cast. So here I will be giving my reaction to that cast. Now, the cast I will be running through in this video is the one that was confirmed by Redmond at Inside Survivor, which is a very reliable source typically. And there was also another cast that was being spread around just like a day or two before this one came out on Reddit. That was mostly same list, though a few changes. But again, I am more inclined to believe Redmond's cast, so that is why we're talking about that one here. Now, before we go through each person, let's first talk about some more general things here. And this is such a weird cast. I mean, this is a really weird grouping of people, particularly for the first ever All-Star season. Now, I think on paper, this is still a strong cast. I do really like this cast. I think this is going to be a cast that is there to play. However, again, I just find it kind of underwhelming that we're coming into this first All-Star season without the likes of Rob Bentley and Graham and Nicole Capper, Tom Schwartz, and like all these like really big figures that were automatically disqualified due to the concept of no finalists. But even within that concept, we are missing some major names on this cast. Namely Werner. I am mind blown that Werner is not on the cast and hasn't been on any rumored cast. Like, to me, that is such a travesty. Really, the lack of people from Season 8 in particular is a massive surprise to me. To where even the biggest lock on the board in my eyes was someone that was not on the initial cast leak and is only on Redmond's. And again, there's no Santoni, there's no Anesu, there's no Rainier, no Kieran, no Tyson. I mean, from Season 7, no Jacques, another mind-blowing one to me. Really thought he was locked. No Cipe. We'll talk about, there's a lot of pre-mergers on this cast. And even within that, no Ting Ting, no Carla, no Ace. Like, there are some major names missing here. But it very much feels like they were going way out of their way to make sure that everyone was on a more level playing field. And I feel like you can clearly tell how this cast was structured, which Redmond does mention that he does think that the tribe delineations are going to be pre-merge versus post-merge, which fully makes sense if you look at the numbers. Again, out of the 20 people that we will be talking about, there are 5 pre-merge men, 5 pre-merge women, 5 post-merge men, 5 post-merge women. It makes sense. Like, it fully fits in that theme. And if that is the theme that they're going for, I do think it excuses some of the questionable casting choices a bit more. And also makes it make sense why they didn't go for like the top of the top players in the world, where even like the bigger names on this cast are not the greatest players. So like, I mean, I get it from that point of view, but I really do feel like, again, they were just going out of their way here to make sure there wasn't like a Rob Bentley or a Graham or a Werner, these like massive targets coming into the season that were probably going to be targeted right away, to make sure like that sort of situation doesn't happen. But again, at the end of the day, it is still an all-star season, and we are seeing people back that I never thought we would actually see back as much as I wanted them to. So at the end of the day, I'm very happy with this cast, even though there are some disappointing casting choices along the way. But with that, let's jump into the cast itself. And here we'll be going in chronological order of when they first played, and also in reverse boot order as well. And let's start off where the first person on this cast comes from Season 4, Survivor South Africa, Maldives. And he is the only person from Maldives on the cast, which I didn't expect them to go this far back. Personally, I am very happy we got at least one person from this season, considering I really thought they were going to stick with Season 6 through 8, maybe dabble in 5. But considering 6 of the 20 people on this cast are from Seasons 4 and 5 is a big surprise to me. And from Season 4 here, we have the person that I've been wanting to see back since I watched the season the first time, and I am so happy he gets another chance, and that is Tajon. And I love Tajon on Maldives. I mean, he is such a great character. He is a player that is ahead of their time for Survivor South Africa. Again, this is coming from a series where Seasons 1 through 3 had a very base level of strategy, outside of Ashley Hayden in Season 3, I guess. But even then, I mean, that was really relegated to the last few rounds of the game. Tajon is someone that was playing really hard from the beginning and is flipping back and forth throughout the entire game, to the point where it does make him a target come the merge. But again, like, I still think he's just a player that was ahead of their time. I think it's going to be so much fun to see him get another chance here. And I also feel like there is this interesting storyline here of, like, he is the person that's coming back with the biggest layoff. It has been 11 years since season 4 aired back in 2011, and to see him back now, still being a big fan, still wanting to be on the show, I do think this is going to be a fascinating return, and I'm very happy to see him back here. And with that, let's jump into season 5, which again, so happy we got 5 people from this cast. Mind you, not the 5 people I expected, 3 of the 5. Okay, but definitely some questionable choices here, but I'm still very happy to see champions represented here. A season that I think is largely forgotten about by the general Survivor community, and is one that, despite all of the terrible production decisions that were made across that season, it is still a fantastic season, largely due to its cast. And with that, let's get into the first person here, who is one of the main reasons for why that season was as strong as it was, and that person is Shane. And I am so happy to see Shane back here again. I never thought we would actually be able to see Shane back on Survivor. Again, Shane was someone that, again, also massive fan of the show, someone that played up the villain card while out there, but is also a very savvy player. I mean, he does get voted out with 2 idols in his pocket, which is not ideal, but the fact that he is this person that is really scrambling for idols, and mind you, he got them in ways that would not be allowed nowadays, with him stealing idols from Sivu and then also from Gina, which again, I believe is not allowed anymore. To be honest, probably shouldn't have been allowed to begin with. But still, again, he is a savvy player that thinks outside the box. He's a big fan of the show, and I think it's great to see him back here. And to go along with that, I am so happy we're seeing Marion back as well. And again, to see Shane and Marion back together is going to be insane. Again, this like power duo from Champions, like, which again, 8 years ago now? To see them back together here, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Marion for me is probably like the person I wanted on this cast the most, in terms of people that I didn't actually think were actually gonna be on. And to me, Marion is kind of like a perfect mix of someone that is a great character, but also a great player. I mean, someone that is very savvy in the game, someone that is a big fan of the show, and someone that, again, like ran their initial tribe with Shane. That obviously ends up merging into a bad position, but again, I think there's a lot of potential there from a game standpoint, and she's also just a great villain for the show. Again, one of the few women in Survivor South Africa to fully embrace the villain mold there, and I think it's going to be really fascinating to see her play again. So happy she's back. But now we're jumping into the more questionable picks here, because now we're getting into the pre-mergers that are back from this season. And the first one here is someone I never thought we were going to see play Survivor again. This is someone that was completely off my radar, and that person is Philip, who I'm not opposed to it. Again, I'm interested in a Philip return here. Now, Philip is someone that on his original season was kind of on the bottom for a lot of it. Like, he was kind of like dangling on to the bottom of the majority alliance before eventually getting cut due to being kind of schemy. He also gets like wrapped up in this food stealing controversy around him eating sugarcane without his tribe knowing. And I mean, he does come off as someone that could play like a pretty duplicitous game. Seems kind of snaky. And I feel like that alone would make for an interesting return here. But again, like someone that I just never really thought we were ever going to have any chance of coming back. I mean, really someone that I thought was like a fun one-off character, but definitely not someone I expected to be a 2-time Survivor player. And while, yes, there are people that I would rather see back than him, I do think when limiting this field to pre-merge versus post-merge, to be honest, again, it's not that bad of a pick at that point. So not opposed to seeing him back. Next up, someone I'm pretty happy to see back here as well, and that person is Shona, who again was on my initial cast speculation video as, again, like someone that I thought would have had a chance if they were casting from this far back, but I never actually thought they were going to bring her back. But again, very happy to see her back as well. Again, another big fan of the show, still follows the show, still has a presence within the Survivor SA community. I think Shona is someone that could be very interesting on a return here. I mean, again, she was a pre-merge boot, was a fun character, had this controversy with David and where they get the idol together and then she tries to steal the idol from him and try to vote him out, only for her to eventually be voted out instead. Like, I mean, again, it's a fun storyline there. And again, I think if we are keeping to this pre-merge tribe, I do think Shona is a pretty good pick for that. Next up, another person I never thought in my entire life, I never thought there was an inkling of a chance that this person would be back on Survivor, and that person is Killarney. This is a mind-boggling pick to me. Like, I don't really get it. Like, to me, there are so many interesting figures across Survivor South Africa, even just from pre-merge, that the fact that they, like, ended up going with Killarney is a weird one. Where, again, like, if we're casting, like, another woman from, like, an old school season, like, I feel like Roxy from season 4 would have been a good pick. And again, there are still people from modern seasons, like Ting Ting, Carla, Josie, that I would like to see back. And the fact that they, like, decided to go with Killarney is weird. Now, I will say that I do think Killarney got a raw deal back in Champions. I mean, she was someone that seemed to be targeted due to a lot of, like, racial undertones, and there was some just more blatant racism coming from Zan on that season against her. And, like, from that aspect, like, again, I feel for her. She obviously had a bad experience with the show, but I just never thought we would actually see her back. And to be honest, I don't know how much potential there really is in Killarney. I never really got the sense that she was that apt for the game, where to me she kind of comes off as one of these people that is almost always going to be an early boot on any season they play. But again, maybe she'll surprise me. I think it'll be interesting either way, but definitely not someone that was ever on my radar. And now we're moving on to the seasons that, again, I fully expected to see a lot of people from. And with that, we're starting with Survivor SA Philippines, where we got 5 returnees from this cast. And I got most of these people right. I mean, I got one person wrong, but even that person I actually just kind of forgot to mention as someone that could come back. Though obviously the glaring omission here of Werner is still bizarre to me. But in terms of people that are back, we do have PK. And again, not surprised. I mean, I think if we were doing a general all-star season, I feel like PK would probably be one of the last people on the board there. But again, considering all the limitations on who can be cast for this season, I think PK is an easy pick here. Again, not surprised to see him back, and is a fun player, fun character, and also is probably going to have a fun storyline with another person we'll be talking about later. So again, I'm interested in seeing PK back here. Next up, we got Tony. Again, I was fully expecting this as well. While I never particularly liked Tony that much on the show, I mean, she definitely was a major character and definitely someone that you could tell production liked while out there, and is also still a massive fan of the show. Is someone that still talks about the show. So again, I think Tony was kind of a no-brainer here as well. Next up, we move on to Palesa, who again for me was one of the bigger locks on the board. I would have been very, very surprised had they done this without Palesa, really under any theme. Where again, she's still a relatively early boot despite making the merge. And while she was like this big fan favorite, she's not really like the greatest player to where she would be like really overpowered in a cast, but also not to the point where she would be directly targeted right away. So again, like it feels like she's like the perfect medium for gameplay wise, while also still being a big name for the cast. So again, I always expect Palesa to be on here, and I think it'll be interesting to see her return. Now, Palesa's obviously a pretty big player. She's the one that does play pretty hard. That being said, though, I do think Palesa probably has one of the bigger targets on her back here, considering I feel like she is one of the 2 biggest names on this cast. But still, again, just excited to see her back and interested in seeing how she does. Now we're moving on to the pre-mergers, where we do have Tevin. Again, not surprising to me. Now, I did mention this in my cast speculation video. Again, he did have some controversy around him that did make it like a question mark of like, would they have decided to bring him back or not? But again, I always thought that if that wasn't an issue, that Tevin was a lock. And he is here, obviously. And again, this should be fun. Now, again, if the tribes are divided the way it seems like they're going to be, he is going to be separated from PK right off the bat, which is kind of underwhelming because I do think their rivalry, if you will, would have been a very interesting storyline here, kind of similar to what happened with Brooke and Flick on Australian Survivor All-Stars. I feel like that is a somewhat similar situation here of PK and Tevin, where like they are friends outside the show still, but obviously like are going to have this tension between them because PK like does this massive blindside against Tevin. So again, I think it'll be interesting to see how Tevin plays this season, and also I think there are interesting storylines here. So again, pretty easy pick there. Last person here, again, this was someone that was not mentioned in my cast speculation video, but I probably should have, because I did actually think that this person could come back, and that person is Seamus, the first boot from Philippines, and I'm okay with this. If we're doing a pre-merge tribe, I'm okay with Seamus coming back. Seamus is a big fan of the show, someone that obviously got a pretty bad deal there, where he gets voted out in a 5-4 vote, but despite that had like this very loyal group to him. Again, the other 3 people that voted for him were extremely loyal to each other, and I would assume to Seamus, to the point where, again, they go to Rocks, the next tribal. Again, like, they were extremely solid there. Like, I mean, I think Seamus, like, again, if he doesn't mismanage Ace and is able to get Ace on his side, like he probably has a deep run on that season. So it's like, again, giving him another shot here, I think it'll be fun. Now I will say that the original cast that was leaked before this Redmond cast did have both Seamus and Jason, the first boot from Immunity Island, on there, which to me felt like a bit much. I mean, to me, they're both very similar casting types, and I feel like to have both of them on, both with this story arc of being the first boot and kind of getting screwed over, I think that would have been a bit redundant, and also, again, kind of disappointing in terms of the caliber of the cast. But again, I think having only one of them is a lot better, and I feel like Seamus being here over Jason is probably the correct choice from my point of view. Now moving on to Season 7, Island of Secrets. Again, once again, 5 people. And the first person we'll be talking about here is someone that I'm not that surprised that they're back. I mean, I think considering both Rob and Nicole were ineligible here, it makes sense to bring back Steffi. I was pretty confident Steffi would have been one of the returners at that point. And like, surprisingly, she's one of the highest placing people on this cast, which is kind of insane. And really on the initial cast that was released on Reddit, Steffi was the highest placing person on that cast. And she's someone that, again, also fun character. Like, while she can be a bit entitled at points, I mean, I still feel like she is a interesting foil to both Rob and Nicole in the end game of that season. I mean, someone that probably struggles with winning a jury vote on that season. It'll be interesting to see if she's able to fix those issues on return here. But again, someone that is there to play. And when you can't have the members of her alliance on the cast, I do think having her back makes sense. After that, we're moving on to someone that, again, I was pretty confident this person was coming back, and that person is Dante, who I'm just fine with. Like, I've never been a big Dante fan, but I think you can tell that production really liked him. And considering he's like one of the few people in modern Survivor to really focus around this like provider archetype, like I do feel like Dante felt like someone that was probably coming back here. Again, not that surprising to me, but something that I am pleasantly surprised with is the return of Meryl, who, again, I think having both Dante and Meryl back should be interesting. Again, we're a pretty fun duo the first time around. Also, like, I'm just interested in seeing Meryl return here. I think this is actually a decent spot for Meryl. I mean, to be fair, probably kind of a bit high variance. Like, I think there is probably some potential for her to be an early boot, but if not, Meryl's probably a top contender on this cast for me. Again, I think she is a competent, pretty much all-around player. I mean, not the greatest player, though. I mean, definitely someone that can be a bit outclassed if she doesn't end up learning from her mistakes the first time. But still, I think she's a player that has a lot of potential here, and I am overall pretty happy to see her back. But now we're getting to the pre-mergers, which, again, kind of questionable to me. I mean, the first one here is someone I mentioned in my cast speculation video, but wasn't really someone that I actually thought was coming back. And that person is Tanya, who, again, was a fun character. I mean, she's essentially the Survivor South Africa version of Debbie. And like, I get why you would want her back, but also, again, like in comparison to, again, the Ting Tings, the Carlas, the Roxys, the Josies, like to me, I would have rather had one of those sort of people back. Again, the fact that Cipe isn't on this cast is also kind of a travesty, and I feel like she would have been more interesting than Tanya. But again, I really do feel like this pre-merge versus post-merge tribe division is probably what's going on here based on this cast. Because I do think the cast doesn't make sense if it's not for that. I think it'll be funny if we eventually do get on the season it's not divided this way, as it really makes these casting choices a lot more questionable. But considering half the cast is pre-merge, half the cast is post-merge, and that they needed a pre-merge older woman, I do think Tanya's probably one of the better picks for that slot. But again, still feels like a weird returnee in the grand scheme of things. And with that, let's move on to probably outside of Killarney and maybe Philip, the most bizarre returnee on the board here. And we're getting Felix back, which, I mean, like, I'm not like completely anti-Felix. And like, to be fair, he's back with Tanya, and I think that will be an interesting dynamic in itself. But whoever thought we were getting Felix back? Like, to me, he was someone that was completely off my radar. Where, like, I did not even have him anywhere close to being contention for me mentioning him in my video. And again, this is another one that it makes no sense unless they are doing a pre-merge tribe. Like, why are they bringing back Felix over, like, again, a Kieran, a Tyson, over like a Mike, over a Jeffrey? Again, Jeffrey was someone that was on the previous leaked cast over Felix. And to me, like, that makes more sense than Felix here. To where, again, like, to me, it only makes sense if this is a pre-merge tribe. And I think Felix could be very interesting on a return here. Like, he is someone that had a level of potential his first time around, but kind of got a bit too abrasive and domineering to where his tribe wanted to vote him out. And like, if he hones that down, I think this could be a decent spot for him as well. Also, I should mention that 4 of the 5 SA7 people here all come from the same tribe. Maybe that's something that could help Felix as well. I mean, he was very close allies to Dante and Meryl, and while they are on the opposite tribe, again, like, if he gets their merge, like, I feel like they should be natural allies for him. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to see him play the game here, but definitely not someone I ever thought would be back. And with that, let's jump into SA Immunity Island. And for me, this is probably where the biggest holes in the cast come from. Again, like with SA4, you can say like Roxy. SA5, you can say Xavion. SA6, you can say Werner. SA7, you can say like Jacques, Mike, and Cipe as like massive holes in this cast. But I think SA8 to me is where the bigger holes come out, where only 1 post-merge player here, 3 pre-mergers, and we are, again, missing the likes of Santoni, of Anesu, of Rainier, of Kieran, and Tyson. Like, this is insane that we're missing that many people here that I thought would have been absolute locks. And again, I think this pre-merge versus post-merge element of it definitely plays a factor here. But even then, like, even in comparison to like a Meryl, I'm surprised they went for Meryl over Anesu. But that one to me probably being like the biggest egregious one here. Or like the other ones, like, especially for the men, I feel like it is tougher to find a spot here with only 5 post-merge slots, where I think like probably the easier ones to replace here are Tajon and Shane, who I don't want to replace. So again, like, I get it with this limitation of what the tribes are going to be, but it's still a bizarre choice at the end of the day. But with that, let's get into the actual people that are back here. Again, the post-merge person, the only post-merge person to make the cut is Chappies. And Chappies is someone that, again, like outside of his newborn possibly keeping him at home, like, I thought was for sure going to be on this cast. I mean, he is the biggest name from the latest season. He was the fan favorite. He was the biggest player by the end of it. Like, to me, it was kind of a no-brainer, but again, I thought the same thing about Werner and Jacques. But at the same time, I do feel like Chappies kind of perfectly fits the mold of this cast. Again, kind of like what I said with Palesa. Like, while those 2 are probably the 2 biggest names on this cast, I do feel like they're also not the best players in the world. I mean, yes, Chappies does have like a good amount of potential, realistically, especially if he's able to manage his threat level. I do feel like he is of a caliber that kind of matches a lot of the other post-mergers on this cast, while I do feel like if you were to add in like a Kieran or a Werner, they would feel a bit overpowered for this cast. Now, again, I can't explain the Jock pick because I still think Jock not being on this cast is pretty egregious, but again, Chappies to me, I think was someone that fully made sense in pretty much every way you think about it. Not surprised by that. And then we get the pre-mergers, and we're starting it off with my winner pick from SA Immunity Island, and that person's Dino. And I thought he was like a dark horse to potentially be on. I will say, again, like, this very much feels to me, again, like they are doing a pre-merge, post-merge situation where I would have thought Rainier would have been the pick over Dino in most situations. But again, considering this is a pre-merge tribe, it makes sense that they went for Dino instead. And again, Dino is someone that, again, I still think has potential in the game. I mean, I think if he's able to build a bit more trust with his initial group, I think he could be in it for the long haul. I think he is someone that gets the game, he knows the game, and I could definitely see his run this season going a lot better than last time. And while, like, again, I wasn't dying to see Dino back, I'm not opposed to the pick here. Next up, we're getting to someone that I didn't want back. Like, I talked about this in my cast speculation video, that I think there's a chance she's back because it seemed like production liked her, and she is still someone that was active in the community after the season aired. But I didn't want it, and that person's Teresa. Like, fine, I guess. I mean, like, I think, again, it would be interesting if she proves me wrong. Again, I think, as of right now, I would debate that Teresa is the worst player to play, at least in the modern era of SA, to where I just feel like she played so actively bad her first time around. I don't know how much faith I have in her on her return, but again, it would be cool if she proves me wrong. That means, again, like, I don't love the casting choice here, especially when I feel like there are other pre-mergers that probably have a bit more potential. But again, not someone I'm that surprised that they went with if they are going for a pre-merge cast. That being said, though, we're getting to the final person on the cast, and how is Pinty on this cast? Now, I don't dislike Pinty. I think Pinty is a fun character, and she had a very fun 2 episode arc of her downfall That being said, again, not really someone on my radar of someone coming back. Now, it's not as like mind-blowing of a pick to me as Killarney or Philip or Felix, as again, like she is from the most recent season. She did have a big presence early on. And again, if they're doing a pre-merge tribe, like again, it makes sense. But again, like I personally would have preferred Ting Ting or Carla or Josie or Roxy. That being said, though, I feel like there's at least more potential for Pinty being a better player than Toriso to me, where I do think she has a level of like Moana upside from Australian Survivor All-Stars, where I could see her trajectory going that way. Now again, don't see her winning, but I could see her making a deep run and getting to a position where she's a go at the end. But still, again, like I think there's some intrigue with Pinty here, and she is a fun character, so again, not the most egregious pick, but also not someone that was ever on my radar. But there we go. I mean, that is my reaction to the rumored cast of Survivor South Africa, return of the Outcasts. And again, this is just a weird cast. And again, coming into it, the context of pre-merge versus post-merge tribes, it makes sense to a degree. Again, I would have swapped some people out. But again, I get where they're going with this cast from that theme perspective. If we find out that this cast does not have that theme, where there is no pre-merge versus post-merge, then I am mind-boggled at some of these casting decisions. Where again, the Pinties, Torisos, Felixes, even like a Tanya, Killarney, Philip, like all these picks feel very weird if this is not broken up by how you place in the game. Where I feel like out of the pre-mergers here, really only Tevin I had as like a lock on the board to return for this season. So again, it is a weird grouping on that aspect. The post-merge group, though, is pretty much who I expected, especially we are considering from pre-Philippines. Like, I thought Tajon had a decent chance in that case. Shane and Marion, PK, Tony, Palesa, Steffi, Dante, Chappies. I mean, all those people were on my cast. Meryl was someone I had as a dark horse to possibly squeak in. So again, I'm not surprised on that end. It's mostly just, again, the surprise of not having more post-mergers. And again, it's because of this speculated theme. But it's still, again, weird to me. No Werner, Xavion, Santoni, Anesu, Rainier, Jock, Kieran, Tyson, Sipe, Mike. I mean, there's so many glaring holes with this cast, but I still think this is going to be a fun cast to watch. It'll be interesting either way. But again, that's the video. Now moving forward, I will be covering this season in a similar way that I have covered All-Star season in the past, and the way that I do plan on covering them from this point forward, where I will be doing a preseason power ranking instead of a cast assessment, which will come out after the official casts and bios come out. Where again, I do think having more knowledge about how these people play and seeing their previous seasons gives me enough knowledge to actually properly rank them. So again, stay tuned for that. I'll obviously do the mid-season power ranking and season review and end-of-season player ranking like I always do. But also something I want to do as well is redo my top 10 players of all time video after this season to see how this All-Star season shakes things up. Now, obviously that is, I guess, determined on how much my list actually changes. Where, like, if it turns out everyone sucked on this season and nothing changes in the top 10, then I might just hold off on it. But then again, we also have to add in season 8, and I do expect there to be changes anyway. So again, like, we'll probably do it. Now, I will also say that this video actually wasn't supposed to be released today. Or again, this is a more impromptu video, which did end up bumping my Amazing Race 33 review, which will be coming out this Wednesday. I also have my Celebrity Big Brother 3 player ranking. That will probably be out on Monday, I'm thinking. And obviously beyond that, we still got Survivor 42 about to start. We got Australian Survivor still going on, Big Brother Canada. Again, a lot of stuff going on. So stay tuned for videos on those things. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.